So, as you can see, joining us today is Stephen Field, former CEO of Page Automotive Group, and he knows a thing or two about growing businesses. And then we've also got Thomas Edwards, Director of Lexington Corporate Finance. So a name not overly familiar within this industry, but Thomas certainly knows his way around from various deals that he's done in the past.
I hope you're right now. I hope you're right there, Mark.
And of course, before we go too far, our disclaimer. So the views and opinions expressed during the following webinar are those of the individual contributors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the contributor's employer, organisation, committee, or other group or individual. Please respect any all contributions, and we encourage you to join the conversation via the interactive functions available. Of course, a huge thank you to our corporate partners, BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emax, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Mercer, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams Automotive Finishes. And of course, our partners, Aztec, the Green Part Specialists, Indasa, Prasco, and the Innovation Group. Okay, so here we go. Let's jump back. Thomas, Steve, thanks very much for joining us today, and I'll give you a chance to just introduce yourselves for those who aren't familiar with your links with the industry. I'm sure Steve perhaps more so, but I'll come to you first then, Thomas. So yourself and Lexington Corporate Finance.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, it was a pleasure to be asked to join this discussion. Yeah, my name's Thomas Edwards. I'm a director at a corporate finance boutique or M&A boutique called Lexington Corporate Finance. We are an advisory firm, so we're all chartered accountants by background. So all we do is advise owners, shareholders, and managers through a transaction. That could be anything from selling their business to a larger group, raising debt finance to grow, or looking at a private equity transaction, or again, advising companies on the buy side when they're looking to grow themselves as well. So we've got prior experience in the sector, mainly through advising the management team of IRG Group on their management buyout of the business in January last year.
Great stuff. Thanks, Thomas. And most people will be, I'm sure everyone's familiar with IRG and the success there. And Thomas has promised not to baffle us with big words today. So we'll make sure that's the case. And Steve, over to you.
Yeah, good. Hi, Mark, and thanks for the invite. Most people know me. I've been in the industry my whole career, from the workshop floor, doing an apprenticeship all the way through, management at 22, senior roles at Nationwide, Autotex, Geotax Glasses, DWS, the big build that we did there in London. Going through, worked for private equity in Turkey, back to the UK, Page Automotive, as the CEO there, and built that business. Currently the chairman of the MBRA, and I sit on the RMI board as a non-exec director as well. So yeah, industry through and through for me.
You're a busy man. You've seen it from many sides. So we'll be calling on your expertise today, that's for sure. So let's just have a little, we're going to jump back to the slides for 1 second. We're just going to have a little skim across the data. So the CAPS claims analysis report, and this is unique claims exchanged. You can see a dip of 15%. So that's the orange line there in the last week. So that is last week ending the 6th of Feb. And obviously that's reflected similarly in supply chain transmissions. So a dip there. So Apple Mobility Trends report, again, taking us through to today, a slight upturn in everything really across the driving, walking and public transport. And this is requests for directions. The Google, not a great deal. We've gone Greater London again, not a significant change, 1 or 2 percentage points from last week. But as you would expect, not a lot has changed in terms of restrictions. Same again with Greater Manchester. Slightly different, obviously, percentages to the Greater London numbers, but again, nothing significant has changed week on week, but you can certainly see where we are still with that. Bristol, we've pulled out of the TomTom live traffic. The red line is the live congestion as of this morning. Average congestion, the dotted line in 2019, average congestion in 2020 is the solid line. And you can just see those obviously peak travel times, those peak hours have really leveled out and continue to be that way. Same with Birmingham, Wolverhampton. We pulled these out. You can see slight upturn in those peak hours transport, but again, significantly down on where it would typically be. All right. So again, always nice to do this before we get too involved in the conversation. So a couple of polls. Everyone who's joined us and joins us regularly will be familiar by now. So what level of claims repair volumes are you currently operating at? And you can see on the screen there, 100% plus, 80 to 100%, 60 to 80%, 40 to 60, 20 to 40, and sub 20%. So again, little temperature gauge just to see where we're at. We're building up quite a nice library now in terms of bi-weekly thoughts on this, which we will collate and share once we get enough data. Just give people a bit of time there. Okay. So there's our snapshot. Hopefully you can see that on your screen there. 40 to 60%, 53% around there, 60 to 80%, 33%, 6% 80 to 100%, and 20 to 40%, 8% there. Okay, and just one more question then. So changes in volumes during the past few weeks. So since the last time we took the gauge 2 weeks ago on the webinar, significant increase, slight increase, remain static, slight decrease, or significant decrease. Again, similar thing. By the way, with all these voting, we can't tell who's voting for what. It's all anonymous. So don't be afraid to get involved. And we've got a couple more polls coming up throughout the session as well, which will keep, hopefully, everyone engaged. Okay. So let's end the poll there because we've got a lot to talk through today. And so slight decrease, the majority 38%, remain static 30%, significant decrease 23%, and then slight or increases of 10% from 10%. Okay, super. Great stuff. So nice starting point. All right, going to come to you there if I can first, Steve. Then so you guys, Thomas and yourself, you see the industry and business in general through very different lenses. You've been immersed in this industry for your whole career, if you like. At the same time, you've built businesses, etc., sold businesses. So, what do you currently see in the industry at the moment, really?
I think for me, I see an industry that's really failed to evolve over the last 20 years. We are still doing things in the same way we always have done. We've become subservient to contracts, be it with accident management companies or insurers. I don't see an industry that really markets itself as a single site or as a group. We just wait for the work to come to us. And I think, things now have to change with what's happened with the pandemic, with what's happened with claims volume coming into us. Quite clearly, those relationships aren't robust and don't work to service businesses anymore. So for me, we failed to evolve. We need to change. We need to take this point now as a watershed and rerun and rethink and remake and remodel how this industry works.
And has this been the sort of accelerator, if you like? Were we always on this trajectory and this has just kind of accelerated things by several years, or has this really been the sort of awakening moment, if you like?
I think it's accelerated things. I think the trajectory we've been on is one kind of born through laziness, that we have a relationship with somebody, we receive some work, and occasionally those relationships change, but overall they're fairly static in the type of business relationships that most of us have. And what's happened is that as claims volume has reduced and gone away, as people drive differently and do less, we're now at a point where we have to rethink how our business is going to operate. That would have come in a few years' time as cars change, technology is changing, people are driving less. I think the onset of electric vehicles would change things again dramatically in what we do. And possibly what we're going through now, I think, is a good thing. It'll make us be a little bit smarter about how we think about our businesses, but certainly smarter about how we get work into our businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Good points there. And Thomas, you obviously see our world or the world from through a different lens as well. So it's kind of, what do you currently see either in the business world, in its entirety, and more specifically, I suppose, what you've experienced from our industry?
Yeah, it's interesting what Stephen said around, perhaps this is a watershed moment. I think over the last 12 months, or the first 6 months of the last 12 months, there's probably a lot of reflection. on where businesses were and where they were going to go. And then I think there was a period where they were, was really impressed with businesses I know that pivoted to do something different. Could they go after a new customer base, or could they offer a new service, given in light of their existing claims volume falling? So I've seen a lot of that. I think now what I'm seeing is people really are looking forward as to what their options are. So yeah, concur with what Steve said. How can you make your business bigger, better, and more resilient? Because I don't think anyone wants to go through anything like this again. So by looking forward and trying to think of ways you can diversify, I think that'll be a real positive and a real theme for not just within this sector, but all sectors. That's certainly what we're seeing as business advisors at the moment. There's lots of discussion around what are my options, what can I do to make my business better.
And coming on to that point, I suppose, in the meantime, do you just continue doing what you're doing? And that's probably, to both of you there, really, that question. But certainly, Thomas, if you can take it up first. But, whilst I'm contemplating that change, or I've decided to make that move, it's almost the challenge is, I suppose, how do I step back and redirect? How does that work mechanically, I suppose? Yeah,
that's a real difficulty, isn't it? Certainly in a growing business or an owner-managed business, there's always that challenge that how do you continue to be strategic and look ahead without losing sight on your day-to-day operations? Because if you drop the ball there's no point looking 12, 24, 36 months ahead. So I think this is a theme I'll come back to later, but I think you've got to have a great workforce, trust your workforce, invest in your management team, and delegate jobs to them and trust them.
Yeah. Okay. And many of those points I'm sure we'll come back to. Yeah. And Steve, your thoughts on that, because you've obviously, done this, you've lived and breathed it previously. How do you ensure that, whilst perhaps changing direction, you're still functioning, I suppose?
In all business trajectory, you have a point of plateau where things sort of steady off and you consolidate. You think, for me, we're currently in business survival mode now. So how will the business survive? How will we get through? To survive, you need to look internally at the business and oneself and take out all the things that you don't need. So what cost is sat inside a business that doesn't need to be there? Get it out. Use the furlough scheme to an absolute maximum where you can. Think about people that you furlough. So technicians can actually answer telephones. So panel beaters can go and pick up cars. So think about your workforce. Keep your technical team employed. Make sure you hang on to them, but get as much cost out of the business as you possibly can. But importantly, rather than being absorbed in the business and worrying and thinking, what do I do? Take time just to step back and look at it in totality. Take time to think, well, what can I change? What don't I need? What do I need? Turn computers off at night, turn lights off at night. The vending machine that sits there burning electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, turn that off. Put it on timer plugs. There's lots of those basic things that you can do that you do at home to save money that people don't do inside businesses. Businesses need to survive. And if you can survive, you then have an opportunity to run and live again. And I implore everybody that's got a business out there, batten down the hatches, lock it down, take some tough decisions now, okay? But make sure you're there to go again.
Interesting. Great words there, Steve. Appreciate that. That's great stuff. And a really interesting way to look at it, of course. Yeah, as you say, people manage their households. Why wouldn't you do the same within the business environment? So with your experiences and specific to the industry or SMEs in general, what are the critical areas relating to financial management right now? It may sound an obvious one. It may sound a silly question, but, can you spell it out for us? Thomas, I'll come to you first on that one. Where do I really need to be focusing my attentions?
I think, perhaps it's an obvious answer, but I think if we can drill down to it in a bit more detail, I think it's all around cash, working capital and liquidity management. I think you've got to be on top of that. You've got to, go back to what Steve said, your cost base, you've got to get that right. This is giving everyone an opportunity to press the reset button and go back and look at your cost base. So, you've got to try and manage that cash flow and working capital. Because look, at some point, you'd like to think there's going to be a change in the sector and things are going to go back upwards again. What you don't want to do is when that happens, be caught out because you haven't managed your costs and your cash flow right through all of this and trying to preempt any pinch points that may come when that happens. Because look, when there is an upturn, your working capital is going to swing back And if you're not ready for it, you're not going to be able to take advantage of those growth things. So I think it's all around managing your cash, but that goes down, a few more levels back to what Steve was describing, is really take a look at your business. What's there that you don't need? Try and save some money there. Are there gaps where you can try and, I say this loosely at the moment because I think we're still right in the middle of this, but are there gaps in your business where actually a little bit of investment now, as long as you've got the cash, will pay big dividends when that uptick does come?
Yeah, great stuff. And Steve, would you concur with Thomas's observations there?
Yeah, this for me, it's one of the fundamental things for me, and I love this. So the first thing to do is go and find the money. So when I say find the money, take a walk into your accounts department, print off a detailed debtors report from your accounts package, Sage, whichever, and sit there and go through it and collect every single penny you are owed. And remember, all money over 30 days old is free money, because you've paid the heat, light and power, you've paid the wages, you probably paid for the parts. So that's gone out of your bank. So that money you get back in now, to me, is what I call free money. It's got no cost burden against it because you've had the cost. So get it in. If there's debt sat there at 80, 90, 120 days, whatever, get on the phone, negotiate. If you're not having an invoice paid at £2,000 because there's a discrepancy over £150 part you fitted, do a deal. Get the bulk of the money in, have the round with the rest of it. But now isn't the time to sit there and, be robust and say, I want all of it. Get your money in. So that's the first thing. Find the money that's missing. The next thing is look at your supplier relationships. What suppliers can you talk to? Can you renegotiate those relationships? Everyone's going through a tough time at the moment. They don't want to lose your business, but there's opportunity there to nudge up the discounts you've got with them by part, or have a conversation that, look, for the next 3 months, can I have a bit more, whatever, I'll stay with you. Do a deal with them that says, I'll buy parts from you for the next 18 months if you help me out for the next 3. So have these conversations. The best supplier relationship any body shop can have is not have one. So if you've got to buy parts, make sure you buy them at the right price. Look at your business internally in terms of estimating how you estimate. Labour, we typically would make 65% margin out of labour. Most body shops will typically make between 17 and 20 pence out of parts, percent out of parts. So you want to sell labour, not parts. The other big issue with parts is you've got to buy them. That ties up cash flow. All you're doing is paying suppliers up the road. So buy the less parts you can, or buy them smartly and buy them the best way you can. And this is the key thing with body shops. We're not always that clever in what we do in terms of procurement, because we're too busy trying to get a car out and hit the 7-day key to key that somebody's asked for. So the situation we're in currently is about surviving, making sure businesses survive, but making sure you hang on to your cash and keep the cash in the bank at all cost.
Great stuff, Steve. Thank you very much for those points. And I'm sure there's a lot of people will heed that advice, and I'm sure many people are working along those lines as well. Now, we'll just jump across to another poll. So these guys have probably answered these questions anyway, but let's have a little look. So again, feel free to vote. What is your key financial focus currently? Multiple choice, so you can tick as many or as little as you like. So we've got improving cash flows, which the guys have discussed, reducing overheads, reducing variable costs, funding, business stability, just to keep me ticking along in the meantime, funding, business development. So that may be new equipment, whatever it might be, taking place there. Investment, acquisition and growth. Are we looking that way? Or alternatively, are we seeking a buyer, i.e. positioning our business for acquisition itself? All anonymous again, so don't be afraid to tick the relevant boxes. We'll get a few votes come in there. All right. So let's share those results. So an interesting spread. Reducing overheads. Majority vote, 58%. Next in line is reducing those variable costs. And then next in line, improving those cash flows. Anything surprising there at all, guys, that you can see? I'm going to stop sharing the results, but as suggested, I think that's right, Steve?
The 2% seeking a buyer. I quite like that one. So, yeah, and you would have to argue, is now the right time to be selling your business and getting out? I would suggest not. I think you need to keep in there and survive and make sure you get decent money for it rather than a distressed sale. And as someone that's carried out quite a few distressed purchases through my career, this isn't when you get best value for your business. But yeah, seeking a buyer, I like that one.
Okay, great stuff. Okay, so there's a vast variety of operations in our sector. No two ways about it. We've got from the single independent repairer with a few employees all the way up to big national groups. We've obviously got the supply chain. We've obviously got insurers, vehicle manufacturers who are all some way involved in the sector. And they'll all be experiencing their sort of own challenges and opportunities right now. So where do you begin to weigh up the future? And perhaps, if we dial in, I suppose, specifically to repairers themselves, how do you weigh up the future financially? And what options do people have? Steve, I'll come to you on that one in the first instance, if I can.
I think weighing up the future financially, it's as our business model changes, we historically have had proprietor-owned businesses that go along. I would argue for a vast amount of time they've been lifestyle businesses, and that's all they do. And we are very much more in a corporate world now, where businesses are run to give a return to them. There are some groups out there that do exceptionally well. There's some that don't do so well. I think Nationwide being a point in case that the biggest, but by far not a great return on sales for them. I think going forward, if you want to expand and grow as a group, you can. Money is cheap at the moment, so borrowing isn't a problem, and you can get funds out there to grow a business. Whether having a big group or a small independent is the right way is difficult, depending on who the proprietors and what they want from that business or the business owner. But one thing I would say is that you have to really understand the industry we work in. We work in what I call a capped revenue industry. Whether you're the biggest group in the world or the smallest body shop, we work off the same estimating system, which caps our revenue. And estimating on things such in that way is very, very difficult. So if you've got 20 body shops, your average repair cost probably isn't that different from a single body shop. So there aren't that many economies of scale that come with being big. The headaches get a bit bigger, I will agree with that one. But overall, we are an industry that our peers in the insurers are worried about premium. They don't want costs going up from there. The estimating system we use right the way across the industry is the same for everybody, generating the same average hours and the same costs, the same whatever. There's very, very little variability overall in terms of the value that comes out from those. I don't think there's necessarily fantastic estimators out there getting great revenue. I just think there's poor estimators out there getting less revenue inside them. And the terms across all the businesses are roughly the same depending on who you get your work from. So if you look at what you get in terms of revenue and what you get in terms of profitability, it's not that different from a good independent to a body shop group overall. It just depends on how they waste it in between. So I don't know whether big groups is the way forward, smaller groups. Me personally, I've always thought that regional groups is the way in which it should be, and that's where I think if you are good in a particular area, stay in the area. Trying to be a big national operation is difficult because you don't have enough coverage to have any particular strength, I suppose, for a word to use to give you an advantage. DWS was always a fantastic operation as a London business because it did an awful lot of repairs in one locality, and therefore got to sit at many tables to have many conversations because it had a critical mass in terms of volume there. That's why I think regional groups can achieve that because they can gain a critical mass and good relationships. But growing a group, I think you'd have to buy an awful lot of businesses to have any terms of safety and stability moving forward.
Okay, some great points there, and we'll come back and touch on many of those because a few thoughts spring to mind as you talk there. So, Thomas, I'll come to you with the same question because you will obviously see the world differently, if you like.
Yeah.
So how does a repairer, if you like, or anyone within our industry begin to weigh up the future financially, and again, what options do they have from a finance point of view?
Yeah, I think the things we've seen as a business is whatever plans people had 12 months ago, they've all been ripped up, and those plans could have been related to, look, when am I going to sell? When am I going to invest in? When am I going to look to grow? Am I going to do this deal or that deal? That's all been ripped up now. And I think a really common theme that we've seen over the last 6 months is, look, not just in sector, but in lots of other sectors, is owner managers of, really true vanilla SMEs coming to us and saying, look, that the last 12 months has been really, really tough for me. I want to accelerate my exit plans. And what they're saying to us is, I wouldn't have wanted to sell for X million 12 months ago, but now I'm willing to take a 20, 25, 35% reduction on that value because they just want to exit. So I think it will have accelerated people's exit plans, which in turn creates an opportunity for somebody else. So some of the other larger, more resilient groups out there, I think there'll be a period of consolidation. I agree with Steve, actually. Look, I think historically the sort of nationwide approach has been proved that that's perhaps not the right one. But I think perhaps some larger, more regional groups can really work. I think something I said earlier, people have looked at the way they can pivot and do something slightly differently. So can you do your repairs quicker? Can you do them more efficiently? Can you specialize in something? So I think there's some people in the sector that do sort of premium high-end cars really well. Well, do other people look to move into that as well? But I think there'll be a lot of opportunity out there for some people, which I think on the flip side, I think there'll probably be some casualties as well for people that haven't managed their financials the right way. But yeah, look, it's two sides of the coin, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the two link nicely together because, coming back to Steve's point, yeah, diversification, absolutely. Is that, one of the keys moving forward? And again, it kind of boils down to the question, and Steve alluded to it, is bigger always better financially? I think you probably covered that off already, Steve, but, or are the numbers just greater? And, that would probably be your sentiment, would it not?
I think, yeah, the numbers, just get bigger. The nice thing about running a bigger operation is you can service relationships better. And you can have relationships at one business that complements, another business. So it gives you a little bit more stability in terms of work and control of work across the business. But overall, if you don't get the margins right, it doesn't matter, how big you are. Overall, the numbers just get bigger. The headaches get a bit bigger, with it as well. But also the drain on cash becomes bigger. So you need to do all the things that you do ordinarily a lot better and a lot faster. You do get advantages of scale. So you get advantages in terms of procurement. That if you're buying more parts from a particular franchise, you can get better discounts on there. And also in terms of paint relationships, you can perhaps negotiate better deals. I'll say perhaps, but so procurement is one area where you can get some strength from it. Yes. But I think you can argue all day long over a pint of beer whether bigger is better or not.
and I'll just pick that point up with you though, Thomas, because there is likely a lot of independent businesses out there who, when we talk about kind of corporate finance, it may, make them shy away a little bit, but at the same time, investors are looking at those kind of opportunities as well. It doesn't have to be, a huge operation that these people back, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, I think, the things I wrote down for this question were, look, I think there's people asking themselves lots of the same issues and the same questions. Yeah, different scale and perhaps a slightly different context. So, there's various different sizes and types of investors out there. And there's some that are focused on a smaller sector. So there's definitely options out there. If you're sat there thinking, look, perhaps my business is too small to be attracted to X acquirer or Y investor. Look, that's not the case. There's plenty of people out there looking for really good, solid businesses to invest in. Steve alluded to it. Money's cheap at the moment, and especially from a private equity perspective, these guys are awash with cash. They only make money by doing transactions. That's what they do for a living. So sooner rather than later, they've got to move that money into assets. I think you flip that back to perhaps if you're a larger player, premium, really attractive assets. Yeah, they're at premium at the moment, so they can drive higher valuations as well. So again, it goes back to what I just said before. There's opportunities at different ends of the scale, really.
Really interesting stuff. And there's millions of different routes we could take with this. So we'll be back in touch, Thomas, and get you on a future webinar. That's for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So financially, and notwithstanding the current situation, again, your experiences, what three numbers should any business know or understand at any given time? And does the fact that you might repair cars influence what you need to know? Steve, I'll come to you. You've been immersed in this industry. What are the three numbers that are key to your success?
it's difficult to get down to three numbers actually for me, because I've got a whole plethora of numbers in my business and businesses that I run going through. Ultimately, the key one, particularly, and I'll give you three numbers that I think are for now, for this point in time, for where we are. What's your break-even number? Where do you need to get to break even? Where do you need to get to survive? Understand that number. So if you're going to run your revenue against your break-even, you've got a chance of surviving. What's your gross margin? So understand that number. If your gross margin's low, then you can look at all things in your business to improve the gross margin, to reduce your break-even, okay, and get it better. Again, if you know the break-even number, what's your cost base? So drive the cost base down. So gross margin, break-even, that's the two. Last one for me, debtors. How much you owed? So collect the money, get it in.
Simple, like it. And of course, we're awash with numbers in this industry, so it's nice to have three to focus on. Thomas, from your perspective?
Yeah, originally I just wrote down cash, and cash. But yeah, look, if cash, I spoke to a few people I know in the industry, and margin and break even were really key ones for them, especially break even. You just know where everything is then. And then purely, one sort of from a selfish perspective, I went to EBITDA, so earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So that's almost a proxy for cash profits that the business is generating. And that's always the number that buyers, investors, acquirers, debt funders always hone in on when they're trying to assess a business, whether that be to buy it, sell it, or advance some investment in the form of debt or equity against it. So that's, over the last 12 months, it's been really difficult to prove what is a company's true underlying EBITDA with everything going on, all the noise around it. So we've had some great fun doing some exercise on that within Lexington over the last 12 months. I'm sure that'll continue for a couple more years as well, until this really washes out of the transaction system. But yeah, EBITDA really from a corporate finance perspective, that's absolutely fundamental.
Great stuff. And I assume, anyone listening in today can drop you a line or come via me. And if they want to have an informal chat about these numbers and where they should be and things, quite happily reach out to you yourself.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, more than happy to have a chat to anyone that's got any questions from today or anything else they want to talk about. Absolutely.
Great stuff. And likewise with you, Steve, I'm sure there'll be people interested to talk to you after this. So I just wanted to run another poll. So influence. So here we go. Let's launch the poll. So do you feel the past year, and by that I mean the pandemic, has influenced the way you manage your business finances now and into the future? So yes, much more business focused overall, i.e. talking about the numbers and the data we've just spoken about. Yes, in certain areas. So maybe it's tightened things up. Nothing has really changed, or no, you were kind of a financial whiz in the first place and had your finger on the pulse. So just let some votes come in there. Be very interesting to see. What do you reckon, Steve? How many are going to say no, financially wizzo anyway?
I think there's a lot of focus out there, I think.
All right. There's got to be. Okay, so let's end the polling there, share the results. So it seems to have had a positive impact in certain areas, 36%. 29%, yes, much more focused overall, which is obviously again another real positive. 27%, hugely positive. Financial awareness has always been their strong point. Nothing changed really. 9% there. Okay, fantastic. So Thomas, I'll come to you first on this one. So has the pandemic, i.e. the past 12 months, has it changed business finance for good?
I think it will, hopefully as that poll suggested, I think it will have made a lot of people look at their business finances sort of internally a lot closer. I think you'd have had to. Again, just personally speaking from experience, there's been a lot of people that have shed costs throughout this. Maybe they furloughed people and realised, well, look, I don't need to carry this many people. I can carry a few less. Much more efficient. I've had a lot of companies, specifically over the last couple of months, get rid of their office. And I'm talking about sort of small businesses and larger ones as well, which has been really interesting. I think that'll have a knock-on effect throughout the rest of the economy if people start getting rid of offices, but that's probably a question for another day. So I think if you're running a business, you're going to have to be absolutely on top of your numbers more than ever. I think forecasting is good. You've got to make sure your FD or your management accountant or whoever's in charge of your numbers has got a really solid dynamic forecast model that you can change at the drop of a hat, because look, things are moving so quick. You want to try and model these scenarios as quick as you can. On the flip side, then I looked at it from not internal, but are you a fund or an investor, and how are you how's that going to impact, or how's the pandemic impacted the way they look at businesses? I think anyone going to raise money now, it's just going to be a couple of steps harder. I think everyone's just going to be incredibly diligent. Look, that's not to say they weren't before, but I think there's just going to be more diligence from these guys when they're looking at investing in you, and they're just going to want to get under the skin of your business more than ever. So that due diligence process that perhaps may have taken, I don't know, a month, 2 months, you could see that taking double that length of time as funders just try and get absolutely comfortable in what's going on. I think you go back to the banks. Well, they've been incredibly inward facing over the last 12 months with C-bills. They've only been able to advance that source of funds to their existing customers. That's given an opportunity to alternative lenders. But I think at some point, there's going to be an impact upon those banks of C-bills. And what does that mean then for business funding landscape going forward?
Great stuff. Great, really good insight once again. And Steve, so kind of translating that, I suppose, across to a more of our industry, if you like, has finances changed for good? Is it completely flipped it on its head how the industry operates?
How it's changed? No, I don't think it will, because fundamentally our businesses will always work in the same way. I think what it has changed is focus. And people and conversations I have had, people have been much more astute about the focus within their businesses, the cost base that's sat there. I have had many conversations with business owners that have sort of said, we've made a few redundancies. 1 or 2 people that perhaps should have gone 2, 3, 4, 10 years ago, but they've always been there because it's just been too difficult to have that conversation. They've always avoided it. The pandemic has allowed them, because of financial pressures, to have those conversations. So I think people will be a little bit more robust in how they now deal with their cost base, and how they will deal with staff that don't deliver a return or a value, and how they deal with things in business that don't deliver a return or value. So if we have something that we get nothing from, then why have it? Are we going to buy that piece of ADAS equipment that we only do 1 or 2 resets at the moment? No. So I think the focus financially inside of businesses has changed and will remain changed moving forward, that people will spend money a little bit more wisely, be a little bit more pragmatic in their control of money, and they'll make sure that cash is king and it sits in the bank, because when things happen, you ultimately need some cash to fall back on, or a planned way of financing a business through reserves and borrowings that enables you to survive and continue. So for me, I think focus financially is what's really changed.
Interesting. Yeah, really interesting. Again, that word cash comes to the fore once more. And kind of obviously wrapping up this session. If anyone's got any questions, by the way, please feel free to drop them in. We'll try and get round to them in the next 5 minutes or so. But cash, investment in the future, what is going to make my business, and you've both got great experience of this and you've both done it, but what's going to make my business attractive to an investor? Whether that be me as a small independent repairer, whether that be me as a big group, whether it be me as a supplier, what's going to make me attractive to an investor? Thomas, if I come to you first on that one.
Yeah, look, a question I really enjoyed sort of preparing an answer for, and I could probably sit here all day and talk about it, but sort of came down on 3 key points. Management team. I think, look, that to the extent of your management team may depend on what size of business you are. But if you're looking for an investor, ultimately they're backing a management team to grow that business and get a return for them. So I think, look, you've really got to take a look at your management team long and hard. Are there any gaps in there you need to fill? Are there people in there that are underperforming and you've just kept faith with them for whatever reason? But actually, you're at a crunch point with this, so it might be that some difficult decisions need to get made. So that's the first one, management team. You need to have a well thought through and absolutely robust business plan that's deliverable. It needs to be achievable but realistic. So that's quite difficult to manage and come up with. Is a tendency for people to start getting carried away, and you end up with hockey stick sort of projections. but that needs to be given some serious thought and well thought out. And when you go and present it to an investor, it's all the parts there. And the third thing, what's the exit strategy? What's the next deal? So even before you've done that first deal, you're always thinking about what the next one is, because without the next one, that incoming investor probably won't make the returns they need to. So some thought's got to be given to that as well.
Interesting. And of the timelines, again, I'm very cautious of time, but have the timelines changed on this? A business plan, typically 3 to 5 years. Is it a shorter one now? And the same thing with as kind of an exit strategy. Are the timelines got shorter? Are they condensed, or are they still based on the same kind of theory that we always knew?
I think it's still based on the same. I think what you're having variations to these plans that are, you might have a strategic plan that you present to a private equity investor, but you might have an internal management case that's perhaps a bit shorter and focus on the next 12 or 24 months it goes down to a bit more detail. And then you perhaps might have a 10-year plan. Look, if we do the first exit, what could that investor at that next exit point do after that? So I think, you take back to private equity investment, the timeline for that is typically 3 to 5 years to make a return. Look, there are some guys out there that are a bit more patient, or patient capital, with evergreen funds that will stay in a little bit longer. But yeah, it's still really the fundamental theory that's not changed.
Great stuff. Thanks, Thomas. And Steve, same points from your perspective. You've been there, you've done it, you've lived it, you've breathed it. What makes a business attractive to an investor?
Yeah, firstly, I've got to know what I'm buying. That's the key thing. So having some decent financial information from a business is critical for me, first of all. What has the business done historically? What's it going to do going forwards? Because if you say to me, I've made X for the last 10 years and I want to sell it for so-and-so, I'm not interested in what you've made the last 10 years. I'm interested in what it's going to make going forwards. And if you, your wife and your son, are going to leave the business when I give you X for it and I have no management structure, effectively, I bought nothing. So we're buying futures, we're buying opportunity. We're not just doing someone's pension fund and topping it up so they can have a nice life. So to sell a business, you have to be firstly aware of what you're selling and sell it in a way that becomes attractive to the person that's buying it. So if you invest money into a business and buy it, you want a return from it. Investing an awful lot of money that you can't see a way of getting back, no one's going to invest. That's the key thing to understand. We talk about, EBITDA, EBIT, so it's the multiple of the business. The better the business plan that could be written for the future of that business, the greater the multiple will be, which will, deliver the value that you want for that business. So historically in our industry, it's around about a 2 to 3 multiple of EBITDA. If you want to get to a 4 or 5 or a 6, you have to have good succession planning inside the business, a strong, robust management team inside the business, and be able to produce on paper a business plan that says this business will grow and perform going forwards over these number of years. The final bit you need to understand if you're going to sell the business is how you're going to grow it. Because a body shop that does 40 cars a week does 40 cars a week. What's the plan to make it do 50? You're going to lengthen the day or do whatever. So most body shops actually grow by becoming groups. So you then have a group of body shops that each one does 40 cars a week. So what's the strategy to get more work in? Because in our industry, you can't punt on people crashing because we know what the situation is. If cars aren't driving around, they're not crashing. So there needs to be diversification in the business and what you're going to do with it to give that forecast going forwards over how it's going to perform in the years going forward. Go from there. And in a market where claims volume will reduce naturally, although there'll be lots of cars on the road, claims volume will reduce, cars getting safer, driving styles are changing completely. Body shops need to do other things in order to grow the revenue lines.
Super insight. Great stuff. Really, really appreciate that input. And of course, we've talked about investing in business and selling businesses, all of the stuff that's just been mentioned. Hey, if you're in business, arguably you should have these things in place anyway, because it's your roadmap for the future. So really, really good conversation today. Really appreciate that. We've obviously got stunned silence from the audience. So that's nice. You must have answered all their questions, but please drop us some comments in the chat. Let these guys know how the session went. It'd be great to hear your thoughts. Again, drop me a line. I think there's loads of things that we can pick up from this session, carry over to future webinars or future sessions. So huge thank you. I'm just going to give Again, big shout out to our corporate partners, BASF, BMS, CAPS, Copart, Emax, Integral, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Mercer, Nationwide Vehicle Recovery Assistance, S&G Response, and Sherwin-Williams Automotive Finishes, as well as, of course, our partners, Aztec, the Green Parts Specialists in DASA, Prasco, and the Innovation Group. Huge thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much indeed for your time and talking to us all about financial speak. As I say, if I get any messages, I will forward them on. Likewise, Steve, thank you very much for your input.
Pleasure.
Great to call on that industry experience, and hopefully we'll see you back in the industry at some time soon. And to everyone else, thanks very much for joining us. Take care, everybody. Keep safe, and we'll catch up with you all soon. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.